And our most recent reality is now this. And this is my frustration. And I think my frustration is more so about CPD, my frustration about all of the inset days that we do with our fellow practitioners, whether that be in school, whether that will be in alternative provisions, whether that may be in social care, even with the NHS, with youth offending, with the police, and so on and so forth. Yet still we're not getting it right. And I'm not sure about you, but it's quite frustrating, and it also angers me, not only as a parent, but also as a member of the community, but also an individual that invests a lot of time in shaping the mindset, the narratives of what takes place within these particular spaces. But I think it's important that we acknowledge and we understand these particular issues. And where these things become really important is understanding what's the gaps. Because the bigger question for me here is not only how are we starting to address issues of systemic racism that exists within, I would argue, all institutions here within Great Britain. But I think secondly, how are we implementing the learning as it relates to things like safeguarding, contextual safeguarding of our children and young people? Or are we just putting young people into categories and we're just kind of reading all of the reports and all of the policies that are there, we're putting them on the shelf, but in practice, we don't seem to be doing anything. Because that's what the atmosphere and the temperature feels like. And I know many of you in the room essentially would share that. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that. And sorry, I've just noticed that there's a question in the group, what about young people living in parental, with essentially mental illness? And just to take you back, that in this current research, it is highlighted, that topic is highlighted in the issue around young people being at risk at home, and talking about that adverse childhood experiences for many of those children and young people. So you're right in terms of that question, and it is highlighted, but the key things that comes up in the research over the last 2 years has been those 7 things that I've just highlighted there. And I think that brings us to a particular point. So if we think about that historical context and we think about what's happened over the last 2 years as it relates to the pandemic, I think we can come to a particular point now and agree that the issues are increasingly becoming complex and more nuanced. It's not straightforward anymore. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it was very clear about what was happening in our community. We were able to pinpoint and see what the problems were. And that's why I want to move us beyond just the typical conversations of why do young people join gangs? Why do young girls join gangs? What are the impacts of young people that join gangs? What is the impact of communities? We had those conversations and been having those conversations for 2 decades. You ain't going to get that information and conversation from me today. But it is about understanding about the changing nature of violence, the changing nature of youth cultures that oftentimes are violent, that causes an adverse impact on young people that may not come from those particular backgrounds. Because what we have now is more and more young people, especially over the last 2 years, that haven't been known to services, that haven't been brought up by any social work team or any team that's linked to any form of antisocial behavior or any form of history of violence within the community. We're now starting to see more and more young people that don't come from those particular backgrounds and environments, and it's those young people now that are the cause of concern. Because they're becoming more and more complex. So I'll go back to my original point about taking a position. That we have to take a position here. We have to no longer just keep having the same conversation about we only want to just work with young people that are in gangs. We only just want to work with young people that are involved in counter lines. Because one of the things that you probably have observed is that all of these issues are now starting to overlap with each other. So this is the biggest question. Are we fit for purpose? These are the conversations, and I believe that this should be the foundation for all organizations and individuals that want to enter into this space. Are we, as collectives, fit for purpose? And one of the things that I always talk about, some of you are familiar with this when I express this is that every organization should do a skill audit. Every organization should do a skill audit with every practitioner, every system, every process. We have to ask the question, are we fit for purpose? Because if we're not fit for purpose, then what we're going to have is more and more of the issues that we see amongst our children and young people, times 10. We're going to see more of it. So if your organization only works with young people from the model of raising awareness, you're going to lose young people. We have to be honest with these conversations now. If you're only raising awareness and not showing young people how they can alleviate the issues that they're confronted with, if we are not giving young people strategies of how they can remove themselves from these issues, and we're only raising awareness, we are going to lose another generation to children and young people. If our organizations think that just by throwing money in the community is going to solve the problem, we're also going to find ourselves in a situation, in a scenario where the money is going to be taken. It's going to be taken, it's going to be received with the thank you, but is it going to create any impact? Or is it just putting plasters on the wound? For those out there that are doing research, if you are not making yourself a part of the communities and you're not investing in those communities that you seek to understand, then all you're going to be utilizing is a series of narratives based on false claims. So when we start to talk about specific approaches in a moment, I think it's very much an important conversation that Monday morning we need to start having with our organizations and start thinking about what we need to be doing to become fit for purpose. And one of the things that I talk about within my work is that despite the fact that I'm always asked to talk about gangs and serious youth violence, is that I always say as part of my position is that we need to move beyond what I call the gang narrative. Because we can focus on the politics and gangs and gang violence, and I'll be totally honest. Most of the fatalities that exist within my local community, most of the young people that have become victims to some element of serious youth violence were not gang members. I'll say that one more time. Young people that I've observed or young people that have had to bury as a consequence of serious youth violence, those young people weren't gang members. So then that means then we have to take a position and not just looking at youth violence through one silo. I'm not arguing here and suggesting that gang violence is not a problem. But I know that for the vast majority of our children and young people in our community that are either perpetrators or victims of violence, these are young people that are not necessarily involved in gangs, but may come from an environment where gangs may be prevalent in that particular community. And I'll break that down a little bit later. But I think it's important that we understand and we highlight that. Why, to conclude the point, is that when we only focus on one category of young people that are involved in violence, then what we do as a consequence is we miss a vast group of young people. Case in point, I meet more young people that carry knives, more young people that have access to firearms than young people that I work with that are in gangs that have knives and firearms. I'll say that one more time. I work with a whole lot more young people that have knives and have access to firearms compared to young people that I know that are in gangs that have knives and firearms.
The course is the Working with Gangs and Serious Youth Violence Level 3 course. It's an accredited program which is accredited through AIM, formerly known as OCN West Midlands. We have 8 different modules to the program, which basically is designed to give you a holistic understanding of working with young people impacted by serious youth violence and gangs.
These programs are important because what we're trying to recognize in the country is that there needs to be a standard, and a standard around recognizing how do we respond to serious youth violence, how do we respond to all forms of criminal exploitation as it affects our children and young people and our wider families within the community.
I think the Gangs and Serious Youth Violence course was probably one of the best things I've done in the last decade, for sure.
been a great experience so far. I've met so many people from so many different backgrounds and professions, working really widely across the youth sector, and it's been really helpful to listen to other people's points of views and experiences.
It was the first course, it was a certificate that I'd had for a long time, something that I wanted. I now write programmes, so I've written a couple of programmes on gang awareness and prevention, knife awareness, self-awareness, bullying. So before I did the gangs course, if you would have asked me to do something like that, I would have told you I ain't got a clue what you want about. How am I going to do that? So for me, the course was amazing because it's just opened up lots of things that I didn't know that I could do that I'm now doing.
Being an adult learner, number one, and someone who hasn't been in, necessarily formal education for a long time, coming into a course that had so many options to support you through your learning, it was quite clear when I started the course that the objective of the educators wasn't for me to just get through the course, but it was to make sure that the students understood and had a full understanding and a holistic understanding of the information.
I've been looking at courses to do with youth and gang violence for quite a long time now, and this one really stood out, A, because it's one of its kind, there's not many about, and secondly, the professionals that lead this particular course are outstanding in their field.
We work with a range of practitioners, people who are specialists within their fields, who have years of experience in working with young people that have their own specialisms as well.
Bringing people in with lived experience is a really important aspect, and that's something that's happened. I grew up in an environment where I've lived around serious youth violence and can say I've been a victim to that. Also having people from communities that are working every day in serious youth violence come in and deliver to the people on the course or the cohort. So I think it's unique in that sense because actually you're learning directly from people with experience.
The importance of having people like myself on this programme as recognised as one of the leading experts in the country around responding to serious youth violence, I think it kind of gives that USP to the course, that it means that the organisers that have developed this particular programme have really thought about who do we bring in to give those real insights.
I've always done little one-day courses and stuff like that, but yeah, they're nothing like this. This is the course that gave me more knowledge and more understanding of working with young people, especially serious youth violence.
I have not experienced a course like this before. I've been to uni, I've studied criminology, had probably two good lecturers, but this course was just different. It was like, I actually looked forward to like what the topics were, how I can apply it and stuff like that, and it was like a little family. It ended up being like a little family, everyone helping out each other.
This is the only qualification in the UK. In fact, we've been hard pushed to find this qualification anywhere in the world, and we know because we looked. There's no other qualification like it. It's a course that is very much rooted in the community. It's very much grounded around having that holistic understanding of actually how do you work with young people who are impacted by gangs and serious youth violence.
That's why this course will have people from the police force, from social workers, from people who are working as teachers, people working in PRUs, people who are in the youth offending service. Everyone comes to this course because there are no other courses like this.
I think a lot of professionals make an assumption as to what serious youth violence is, and I think a lot of professionals band children into the term gang, when actually there is a significant difference between children that are engaging in serious youth violence, gang members and organised crime groups.
We have two courses which cater for, I suppose, different types of circumstances. So we have our distance learning course, which enables you to study alone basically, go at this particular programme. You get access to our portal, you get pre-recorded content, and you can just basically study this programme by yourself. And that programme is open all year round. The blended learning course currently runs once a year. So we usually start the course in and around April time, and it lasts until November, December. But the blended learning gives us the option to, work with other people and also get those lectures live. So that's whether that's live online or as well face-to-face. So it's that blended learning experience that we offer through our certificate programme.